Hello, this will only be a basic Nifskope editing guide showing the most frequent nodes and properties and controllers on this statue mesh, and I will hope you will use the live mesh editing script, which will instantly show the result in game. Like I can spawn the statue instantly, and as it is too big for me, I can decrease the size like that, and I have done it only by there is this live mesh editing script, and only thing I have to do is type the path of the NIF file in it, like it is only in data files, meshes, and this NIF file here, and every change I make in it I can see it in game and see if it works correctly. So in this NIF file there we have this containing NiNode. It is like a tree structure containing parts of the mesh, and I will quickly jump into it. For example, I will make this axe rotate randomly, and for that I will use a Keyframe Controller. For example, every node and tree shape or component can have its respective controller. For example, NiTriShape can have a Keyframe Controller or path controller or morph controller, but most of the time just a keyframe controller is easy to add in Nifskope. You can add it by right click anywhere and insert NiKeyframe Controller, and it will add it to the top of the file randomly, and we have to link the controller afterwards on this NiTriShape. So here this NiTriShape has a couple of properties, and we just edit these values, and there is this controller value, and we have to type the node number of the keyframe controller. So just now the keyframe controller has 0 number, and we type in 0, and we see that the keyframe controller is added on this X, but we have to first save it, because at first the keyframe controller doesn't show a target property, but now it shows it, and we have to type the target of the controller as well. So the NiTriShapes number is 54, so now it is correct. Here is the controller, and here's the target. And now we have to add the keyframe controller, the movement that we want. For example, I will want 10 seconds animation, so the stop time will be 10 seconds. Frequency is usually just use value of 1. This will only speed up or slow down the animation. Phase is not usually used, but this shifts the animation by seconds, but leave it at 0. The important value is the animation flag. Usually we use 8 or 12. 8 is for repeating animation and it is more reliable. And in the keyframe controller's keyframe data, we can add the keyframes, which will actually make the rotation on or scaling or translation animation. So for example, I want to rotate this X. I have to add, to make a 360-degree rotation, I will need 3 keys. And in Nifskope editing, the linear key is best. Do not leave this value empty. I have to save it to see these values. For example, maybe the full rotation will be 5 seconds around the, this is the X, Y, Z axis. So at start everything is 0. At half time it will rotate 180 degree, and at the end of the animation it will do a full rotation like that. For example, the animation is going for 5 seconds and then stops because the total animation time is 10 seconds, but we only specified keys for 5 seconds. So for the last 5 seconds the X is stopped, but if we decrease it to 5 seconds then it will be a continuous animation, and we can maybe change the axis. Maybe x-axis will be the best, I don't know. I think I will delete this rotation animation because the axis original orientation is not on a fixed axis. Instead it is randomly, so it would take time to figure out the correct axis. I will just maybe add some scaling animation just for test purposes. For example, 2 seconds animation, and it increases in size a little. Well, it is lame, but just for showing it. And what is also important is that if you add the Keyframe Controller on a NiTriShape or NiNode, then the translation or rotation or scaling in the Keyframe Controller will overwrite the values that the mesh or NiTriShape originally has. So for example, the Keyframe Controller now has scaling, and it is overwriting the value here. So if we type in values here, it won't take any effect. But for example, our Keyframe Controller now only has scaling, then the rotation or translation will still work. Now let's test the file in game if the animation is playing, and we can see that it is not playing, and it is because we have to add NiBsAnimationNode as a parent node of the controller. If we can add this NiBsAnimationNode only to a parent of this one NiTriShape, but it is best if everything is under the same animation parent node, so we can either convert the containing Ni node into a NiBsAnimationNode, or we can attach a parent node on it, NiBsAnimationNode, and convert this back to just a Ni node, or maybe the other way around is better. And we have to add a correct flag for it, usually 32, 64, 106, and these values are best. I will use 32. This flag will make the whole animation inside this NiBsAnimationNode independent of anything else. So it should work now, as you see. And it is now causing some strange collision problems, and it is easy to fix just by adding another parent node, which is NiCollisionSwitch. So we have to convert this other parent node into a NiCollisionSwitch with flag 0, and now we can actually walk through this. So now I will add glowing red eyes to this statue with billboard nodes, but first I will make some order in this animation tree just by adding another parent node under it, Ni node, and I will make this the NiBsAnimationNode, and this will just be a Ni node, and I will make this original statue, and I will add another Ni node, which will be containing the effect parts. So I want this Ni node to be the children of the animation, whatever, and to make this node the children of this node, we have to attach it here. As you see currently, the node 4 has only one children, and it is node 5. And if we type in 2 here, you see there is another slot, and we have to type in 0, so this node will be children of this node, and we will add the effect parts under here. So I will name this effects, just so we know. And I have this another NIF file opened up, which only contains plain mesh, and I will add properties onto this and make a billboard out of it for the glowing eye effect. So I copied it and I can just Ctrl V and it will be here. But this NiTriShape doesn't have any properties and it is not visible, only if you press this show hidden. But it will be visible after we add some properties to it. So first we will add material property, attach property, NiMaterialProperty, and this will set the color and transparency of the mesh. We have to save it to see all values. Flag is not important. Color is usually set it to white because the color of the thing will be set in the texture file itself, but we can change the color of the texture, but it's not really good as it is overall color change, but this property is needed. Second, we will add texture property, NiTexturing Property, and this texturing property can have various texture maps. Base map is the main texture, dark texture is a texture which can hide parts of the base texture, detail texture can be some additional detailing texture, glow texture is showing bright in dark, and bump texture has also some uses, for example for texture effects. Now I will add the base texture on this. You have to select the Ni source texture and select the file. For example, this glowing texture, and you can see here that this is not what we need because the whole black background is showing and we will need the NiAlpha property for that. So let's add NiAlpha property, and you see this mesh became transparent because when you add the NiAlpha property you have to set the transparency value in the NiMaterialProperty, which is this alpha value. If you set it to 1 it is fully visible, this is half visible, and the alpha property flag is important because it changes how the texture is handled. For example, this basic value shows the black parts of the texture, but if you change the alpha value on the alpha property of this NiTriShape to 13, which is this flag is mostly used for transparent effects like magic or spell effects or waterfall, then with this flag you will see that only the colorful and bright parts of the texture is showing, but the dark and black parts are not showing. And here it is important to check the channels of your texture. For example, if I open this texture app in Photoshop, then you can see that it only has red, green and blue channels, and it doesn't have an alpha channel which sets the transparency or visibility of the RGB channels. For example, if I open up another texture which has proper alpha channel, then you can see that it can be the same as the RGB channels, or maybe it can be set up like this. So where the alpha channel is white, only there will the RGB channels show. And here it is important because if we, for example, I use this texture, not this, because it has some fucked up channels, or at the edge it is not nice, maybe this texture, then you can see, maybe I will change the background a little. You can see that with this alpha flag it only shows the bright parts and not uses the alpha channel. But if we use this flag with the proper alpha channel, we can either have the parts of the texture transparent and either have black parts in the texture. And yeah, these flags numbers aren't just random numbers. There are specific settings and these determine the flag, but mostly you will need these two flags. There are other fun flags, but you will only need these mostly. But yeah, for example, with this flag the black part is showing, but with this flag the black part is transparent. There are some other properties I could add to this NiTriShape, but I will only need them later, so I will add them later. Maybe there is another important property, which is NiStencilProperty, which does a lot of things, but it has a basic use for when your mesh has only face on one side. For example, it is not a double-sided plane, and if we add NiStencilProperty on this NiStencilProperty with the basic values, you can see that this draw mode property is important for us because it sets how this mesh is rendered. For example, if we choose this clockwise draw mode, then only the other side of the mesh will be shown. If we choose counterclockwise, then the original side is showing, but if we check draw both, then both of the sides are showing. But I will just use this one side because we will only need one side of this, because I will add this NiTriShape under billboard property. BillboardNode. And what a billboardNode does is that everything under it, every children of it, meshes or other things, will be put in a coordinate system which is based on the view angle from where you see the mesh, or in other words, you will see the mesh always from the same view angle, no matter where you are. it's easiest if I just show how it works. So you can put a mesh under a billboard node by attach it as a parent node. Attach parent node, you can select billboard node or NiNode and convert it afterwards. Billboard node, and main setting, only setting most of the time you will need is the flag the billboard node uses. This is the rigid face camera, is the best one. This will make the mesh face you from all view angles. For example, in game, now it is under the ground, but we can move it above the ground a little. And as you see, we can, no matter where we are, the plane is always facing towards us. If I remove this billboard node, you will see that it is only a plane. And now I will reapply the billboard node, and we will move this mesh into the position where we want it. But first we have to understand how this translation works. So for example, if I move the main parent node, which contains everything, by 100, then everything will move up by 100. But for example, this is the node which contains the billboard, and if I move it up, then only that will change position. And what's important here, that the coordinate system is different on things which are under a billboard node, because the z-axis is not the upwards axis. Instead, it is based on the it is like a change in view distance. For example, if the z direction is 0, then the mesh is exactly where it is originally. But if I type in here, for example, -50, it is not visible in Nifskope, but in game it is visible, because it is actually moving closer to you. For example, if I increase this to 100 or 300, then it is actually becoming closer to the character. This is actually useful sometimes. For example, if I type in -100 and move this whole thing under a little, then for example, it will always be before the statue mesh. Sometimes it is useful, but most of the time just leave it at 0. But it is good to know that the translation under billboard node works different. So I will just move this billboard node up to the eyes position, reset this to 0, maybe there. little adjustments. I think it's almost nice. Maybe it's okay now. And as you see, the plane is intersecting with the mesh. And for example, if I move the NiTriShape under the BillboardNode a little closer to the viewpoint, then you will see that it won't be intersecting with it. But of course the NiTriShape is too large now. Maybe this is enough. Maybe distance is too much. Yeah, like that maybe. Now I will create another copy of this glowing eye on the other side of the face, and easiest way to do that is just copy the whole billboard with the NiTriShape and Ctrl V on this parent node, and we have another of that, and we just have to adjust the position of this by intuition or something. Maybe it's in good position, like that. Well, this copying is easy to do, but it is hard to edit afterwards, because if, for example, we want to change the looks of the eye on both sides, then we would have to edit each property twice. So what we can do is just rearrange these properties. So what is important in Nifskope is that, for example, this NiTriShape has these 4 properties, but we can give properties not only to meshes or particles, but we can give them to parent containing nodes, and it works like everything under the parent node will receive those properties if they don't have one already. So what we will do is that I will create another containing node, and these will be the effects, and this will be the glowing eye, which will contain these glowing eye effects, and I will add all properties to this containing node. So, for example, this NiTriShape has these material, texture, alpha, and other properties, and I will just remove them from here and add them here. And the easiest way to do that is, like, this has 4 properties, I want 4 properties here too, and I will just type in the same numbers as here, like 65, 66, 68, 69, and now the same properties are on the NiTriShape and also on this containing node, as it is possible that multiple things have the same property linked, but we don't need these properties to be listed here as well, so we will just remove them. So now what happens is that while this is only a NiTriShape without any properties, it will receive properties because the containing node of it has the properties. And what we will do is that I will remove all the properties from our second billboard mesh 2, because these are duplicated properties, and we will just control delete them. So what we have now, maybe I can create another containing node so it is easier to see. Attach parent node, oops, attach node, and move the other billboard under it too, which is 72, and remove it from the original parent. So what happened now is that we have the effects containing node, under it we have the glowing eye part, which has the properties that we want, and these properties will apply to all meshes here, which are only two plain NiTriShapes under billboard nodes. So it is good because we can just edit these properties and both of the planes will receive the change. As you see, it still works. But for example, if I change the alpha property, then both of the alpha properties will change, or I can change the texture easily to some other texture. Maybe it's better. And I can add new properties to both of these meshes. If you check in game, then you can see that these billboards aren't too good because they are overlapping with each other from some view angles, and this is because we have to give another property to them so that the rendering engine know how to treat these overlapping meshes, and it is called NiZbufferProperty. So we can just attach this property to this containing node, attach property NiZbufferProperty, and most of the time you will have to use flag 1, which fixes this problem. As you can see, now from all view angles they aren't overlapping with each other. And also there are some other interesting NiZbuffer flags. For example, 0 makes things render through everything. For example, if I move behind this mesh, it is showing through everything. It is also useful in some cases, but I will just leave it at 1 for now. Now sometimes only one plane under a billboard node is not good enough, because as you can see, the edge of the plane, the intersection is very visible. Well, in case it is not that bad, but sometimes it is very annoying. So what we can do is create some 3D mesh for this thing, and I will just copy this plane over here under the effects node. So this will be maybe first. So here is just this plane, and I will add the effects again to it the same. First, attach a parent node and attach another one just in case. I will name this head aura, and so I will want to do here not a billboard node, instead many copy of this rotated plane, and I will combine them, so it will be a 3D VFX mesh. So I can just Ctrl C, Ctrl V it, rotating it in one direction, and make another copy, rotate it in the other direction. And in Nifskope we can combine meshes. These are the three separate planes, and if they have either the same properties or they have no property, we can combine them by right clicking on their containing node and optimize combined shapes. So now we have only one shape, and we can do it again. Create 3 copies. Oops, wrong place. Create 3 copies and rotate them again a little. Maybe like this. I'm not sure. I'm trying to do some random rotations here. Combine them again. And rotate them again. Maybe it's good enough. So combine them again. So what we have now here is a NiTriShape which has 60 vertices, so it's not that much, but we can apply properties to it, and we will see how it turns out. So far we have two effect containing nodes, the glowing eye, which we did earlier, and I can just copy these properties over here. So material, texture, alpha, and stencil as well. We will need it to show both sides of the plane, and as well the NiZbufferProperty. So we have this 3D mesh, and I will choose some other texture, maybe some smooth texture should be best. Maybe this one, but with different alpha property. As you see, it is quite okay now. And if I save it, we should see it in game here. And it is too small. I will make it much bigger. and there it is, and I will move it on the position of the head. Yes, I will delete this collision thing because it is annoying me. Okay, but usually you need that. But I will now remove it. So maybe it is too big now. Maybe it's okay. Move a little. Yeah. Move it to position. Maybe it's too bright now. So we can either change the material property so it doesn't have too bright color, or we can either change the alpha value so it is more transparent. But as you can see, it is a 3D glow effect, and each plane is hardly visible, but as we have a lot of planes, their brightness adds up, and the boundaries of the planes are not too visible. And we can also increase the number of planes, so the result is even better. But I think it is good enough to show how it works. Okay, I will make a new effect, and there I will try to show the NiAlpha controller and UV controller and dark texture slot as well. So I will make a new plane under the effects section, create a parent node to it, NiNode, like here is our plane. Maybe I will move it on the shoulders, so maybe I will make some shoulder effect. I will add some additional parent nodes and rotate the plane and move it up to the position of the shoulder. And rotate it, not right angle. Yes, it's getting okay. Maybe it's on the right position. Actually, now it is. And I will make it a little bigger. Okay, so here it is, and I will attach the same properties, copy them from here. I will make this shoulder effect and copy the properties. I will need draw both, so both of the sides are showing material property and alpha property. So here is the plane. Now I will select a different texture on it, which will be a tiled texture, like this maybe. So tile texture is just, you can repeat it in any direction and it will look continuous. And what I will do is attach a UV controller it, so maybe make the flames go upwards. So to do that I have to insert the UV controller and attach it on this mesh in the controller value. So now it has the node number 0 and I have to link it there, so it is there, and I have to save it first to see the target in the UV controller, like now we see it, and we have to type the mesh number, which is the target of the controller. So we have to type these two values, and now we have the UV controller. I will want to make some 4-second animation, maybe repeating flag one frequency, so it is playing in the normal pace or speed. And now I can add the UV data, which will be the keyframes, which will control how the UV is moving. We can add the translation and scaling to UV, but not rotation. The first two values are X direction UV moving, second is Y direction translation, third is X direction scaling, and the fourth is Y direction scaling. I think I will want to go with the Y direction scaling, so I will add two keys and linear interpolation, because that's what is easiest to edit in Nifskope, and time is 4-second animation, and the values are so the 0 is where the texture is originally is, and if you type in 1, that will mean that over 4 seconds the texture is moved by one of its full width or height, so it is moving up one tile like that. I forgot to set the correct NiBS animation values, so if we check it in game, we see that the flames are moving. I will remove this Keyframe Controller or disable it. So yeah. Now I will add dark map on this plane mesh, so we will not see this flame texture on the edges. Instead, we can hide parts of the texture or the plane which we want. And the way we can add dark texture is just select the texturing property and add dark texture by clicking yes, and add the source, and the source should be some texture where the red and green and blue channels are completely white, and only the alpha channel should matter. I will show some example. like this. Well, here the red and green and blue channels are also the copy of the alpha channel, but if we completely make this white, that should be also okay. So only thing that matters is the alpha channel here, and where it is black it will hide the base texture. I will name this texture like that, save it, and I can, this is the texture that we created, and if I edit, you can see that it hides the base texture, but it is not perfect yet. Because currently the base texture is also moving by the UV controller, and we do not want that. We want the dark map texture to be stationary, and we only want to move the flame base texture. And this is because currently this NiTriShape, this plane, only has one UV set, which makes the texture spread on this shape in the way we want. But we can make a duplicate UV set and designate the base texture to one UV set and designate the dark texture to the other UV set, and we will only move the first UV set. So this will make what we want. And we can, so currently there is only one UV set on this plane, and we can easily add the similar copy of it. As you see, the UV set is just a couple of values, and we can make a copy of it by entering that our NiTriShape should have two UV set, and if we hit refresh, you will see that there is a new UV set, but there are no values there, so it will not work. But we can just copy, hit Ctrl+C on this UV set and paste over the second. So now the NiTriShape has two copies of this, two UV sets, and we needed this because in the texturing property we can set that which texture map uses which UV set. So currently this UV controller is moving the 0 UV set by default, and you cannot change that. It is always moving the base texture, I think. So if we want that the dark texture is not moving, then we have to type in that the dark texture should use the first UV set, not the 0 one. And as you see, now only the base texture flames are moving and the dark texture is not. And also we can change other UV settings on this NiTriShape. For example, I would want to make the flame base texture look denser. Then I could select NiTriShape, right click, edit UV, and currently we don't see the texture here, and that is because we do not directly attach the texturing property to it. Instead we attached it to the parent node, but I will just link it here so we can see what is happening in the editing UV user interface. So edit UV, and we can see that this is the size of this NiTriShape. And for example, if I want to make the flames a little denser, then I can right click and scale or rotate. For example, I will scale this to by double the size of the plane, so the base texture is actually repeating twice inside it. And also here we can select the texture slot. For example, if I select the dark texture, I will see that this is the dark texture, and I can also scale this. And now you see that this is the first UV slot, not the 0 one. And you can see that the dark texture is also repeating, and you can change that by the clamp mode. For example, the wrap, this is the two directions, maybe X direction and Y direction, or sideways or upwards, I don't know. Wrap is the repeating and clamp is the not repeating one. For example, if I select clamp on both directions, then it will not repeat. And if I want to repeat in one direction, then I can do that as well. But I will need a clamp here. Now I will add some finalizing touches to this flame part effect here. For example, I want this NiTriShape to a little wider, and I can do that by I can scale meshes in Nifskope by right click and transform scale vertices. And for example, I want to make it a little wider in the X direction. I hope it will be that. I can do that. As you can see, the texture is stretched, and I will add different dark texture to it, which will look nice for flames. I think this one maybe. And I will change the wrap mode here to this, so it is repeating on the X direction. And currently it is hardly visible, so I will edit the dark texture to be a little more visible, and I can do that by increasing the brightness of the alpha channel, maybe with curves. It is a little brighter now, and save it. And I can edit, and it is a little brighter now. Maybe I will change the alpha value. And change the tiling of the dark map texture because it is a little wrong now, I think. I will change back to the original, like that. And maybe I will edit the dark texture a little more because the top parts are showing. I think it is because it is not completely black on the edges. So I will just erase those parts. Maybe I can try different textures. This works quite nice. And here only this one plane isn't really visible, and it is obvious that it is only simple UV controller plane, but we can boost the effect by creating multiple copies of this NiTriShape and apply different UV controller speeds on it. I will show what I mean. So I will create a couple of copies of it. Maybe make some of them a little higher or smaller, and yeah, like that. And now the UV controllers are still in the same pace, so it is a weird effect, but I will maybe change the speed here twice as fast, and here I can change that it is not starting at 0 and ending at 1, instead it is shifted a little, and the same here. It is best if you add the full one changes here, because if I if I apply smaller amounts, then the animation will shift or jump. So maybe it's not perfect yet. Maybe we can rotate the planes a little. Well, it looks like this currently. It's also not a perfect because it is obvious that it is only a plane, but if you create multiple planes or use some better starting mesh, then it can look quite nice with finalizing touches or better textures. You can create very realistic flame effects. Okay, now I will quickly show the Material Color Controller and NiAlpha Controller. Maybe I will make this axe disappear over time. So if we want to make something transparent, then we have to use this alpha value, but this alpha value in the NiMaterialProperty only matters if our mesh has NiAlpha property. So we have to attach NiAlpha property so the mesh can be turned transparent, as you see. And what is important now is that in this vanilla statue mesh, all meshes share the same NiMaterial property, and let's say we want to change it only here. We can split properties either by clicking spells, optimize and split properties, but this will split all properties into individual ones, and I just want this to be separate, so I will just copy it, Ctrl C, and create a duplicate NiMaterial property and remove the other one, so it only has this new separate NiMaterial property, and we will apply the NiAlpha controller on it, so we can make it disappear over time. To apply this controller, you can click on this controller value in the material property and select Alpha Controller, select repeating flag, frequency 1 normal speed and 4 seconds animation. I will use 3 keys. For example, in the middle of the animation at 2 seconds, the mesh is disappearing. At the start it is visible, and at the end it is also visible. So it is like this. And if we check in game, it will not work because the mesh has vertex colors which are useful in a lot of cases, but if a mesh has vertex colors, then you cannot have this transparent global transparency value, because actually the vertex colors are individually giving color and transparency to each point of the mesh. As you can see, now currently some of these are darker but you can completely disable them, and in that case the animation will work in game. And now the other property is the NiMaterialColorController. For example, now the remaining meshes, for example, body parts of this statue still share the same material property, which is node 13. As you can see, this NiTriShape has two properties, and this other NiTriShape has also the same material property. And for example, if I change the colors here, maybe to red in these colors, you can see what the vertex coloring does. For example, here this material property color change will only apply where the vertex color is letting it. And we can attach a controller to this NiMaterialProperty, to these colors separately. So we will actually have to attach 3 controllers, because only the ambient, diffuse and emissive color works. This peculiar color doesn't do anything. To attach the NiMaterialColorController, you can select it here, and we will as well make a 4-second animation, 3 keys, and you can select the RGB colors here. I think the last one is blue, and for example at 2 seconds I will make it turn from blue to red. And this first controller that we added is targeting the ambient color, and we will need 2 more controllers for the diffuse and emissive colors. So we can right click and copy and paste and hit another paste, and as you can see, you can have multiple controllers after each other on a material property or even keyframe controller or other controllers. So now we have these 3 controllers. You can see that in the first there is the NiScontroller link, and here's the link for the third color controller. And actually, when you copy it this way, they will use the same keyframe data in all of the 3 controllers. So all 3 controllers will use these color changes. All we need to change is that the second NiMaterialColorController should target the diffuse color, and the third should target the emissive color. So in this animation it will look like this. Now I will add a little particle effect on it, just so you can see that with the live mesh editing script it is pretty easy if you get some practice to add any kind of particle effect you want. I usually just copy an existing particle effects into my file and edit it afterwards. This is the vanilla illusion cast effect, and it has 5 or 6 particles, separate particles. I will copy this whole thing over in my file under the effects, so it is there. And as you can see there are a couple of nodes here because it was exported from 3ds Max and not organized, but basically a particle needs only an emitter node, and particles will be emitted from that position. For example, this 6th particle is under the particle system controller. You can see that the emitter is this 135 numbered node, so the particles will be emitted from the position of this node. Actually, I will delete everything that I don't need and just keep one particle. So I control delete everything that I don't need and only keep maybe this Cloud 6 emitter. So as you see, now only one particle has remained, but as we deleted the other particles, the properties of this particle has been deleted also, because it shared these properties. So we can just reapply these properties. For example, a particle also needs a texturing property, a material property. So we copy it from somewhere else. Paste, copy, paste, and now the particles have the texture, and we will remove this dark texture, and we can remove this source texture as well, and we will apply some basic particle texture and change the alpha value. Maybe it's a very ugly particle texture. Maybe that one. And so basically this node will contain our particle effect, and this is the emitter, this is the particle, the node that contains all of the particles. And a lot of times the containing node of the particle is a NiBsParticle node, because it is similar to the NiBsAnimationNode, because the flag of the NiBsParticle node can tell the game how should it treat the particles. For example, the particles can be trailing, or if the object is moving, so they are not moving with the object. Well, most of the time, for example, spells use flag 10 because they need trailing, and we copied that vanilla spell effect, and that used this flag 10. But for example, this flag is good for objects, but you maybe don't even need this NiBsParticle node, because if you have NiBs particle node, it will overwrite the NiBsAnimationNode flag, which it is under. So it is best that if you have everything under NiBsAnimationNode, you remove this NiBs particle node, because then that will be a separate animation. So I will convert it to just a Ni node. And under this Ni node, there is our particle system controller. So now, as you can see, the particle is emitted from here, and that is because the emitter is in that position. If we change this position to some other place, this is just a node, an empty node, then the particle emission position will change, and the particle system controller is linked to this emitter node, as I said earlier. So after this, if we are going further, the particle system controller is linked, or I mean is controlling the particle node itself, and it can be different kinds of particles, Ni rotating particles, or just Ni particles, or Ni autonormal particles. In Morrowind they do the same, but the safest one is the Ni autonormal particles. So we will convert these Ni rotating particles to that, and so you understand how this works. So far these are just containing Ni nodes, like this particle effect is just a containing node which contains the emitter, and this is also a containing node, and this contains this Ni particle node, which, as you see, has a controller linked, which is the particle system controller, where you can set the particle speed and size and lifetime and size, everything. And the particles also have Ni particles data, which is like similar to NiTriShape data on a mesh. So we will convert these Ni rotating particles to a Ni autonormal particle by convert, and first to Ni particles, then Ni autonormal particles, and we will convert the particle data to Ni autonormal particle data. Okay, so if I save it, it should work in game, as you can see. So we will just change the values in this particle system controller. For example, we will want a 4 seconds animation. The starting speed of the particles is maybe 200, and speed random is 100, so the resulting speed will be either 100 or 300, because this is a minus and plus value adding to this. So the particle speed, like as you can see, it is spreading out more randomly. These are the directions. For example, this is a direction and angle. For example, if these are in pi numbers. If I change it to full 330 degree in pi, then it will be spread in every direction on one plane. And if I change it in every direction to full degree, full circle, then it will spread over everything, but I will just want particles to emit in one direction. This is particle size, so particles are bigger now. Emit start and stop time. So we have a 4 seconds animation, and if I type in 2 seconds, then particles will be emitted only for 2 seconds, and after that for 2 seconds they will not be emitted, like that. But if I change here 4, then it will be a continuous particle emission, particle animation. The emit rate is changing how fast particles are emitted. For example, if I type in a very big number, then all of the particles will be emitted at once. But if there is this emit flag, and it is recommended to use 0 here, because then this emit rate will not count, and instead the particles will be emitted evenly. So you don't have to worry about not continuous animation. This is particle lifetime. For example, if I type in 2, then particles will be there for 2 seconds. And there is also, you can type random value here, so not every particle is there for the same time. This is also a useful value which makes particles to not start from the same position. Instead, they can spread over. For example, if I type 100 here in the X and Y direction, then the particles will be emitted from a plane, and you can even make it any kind of you can make it the way you want. For example, now particles are starting on the z-axis randomly. Maybe I will just give some small randomness here. And this is the number of particles, which is important. So currently our particle have 31 particles, so only this amount can be shown at once on the screen and not more, but we can increase this number easily just by typing here the number that we want here. For example, I will need 200 particles, and actually we have to do some other value changing to make this happen. First, this number valid should be always 0, no matter how many particles you have. And there is this, the particle has the particle system controller, where we entered this 200 particles, but particles also have a particle data, and we have to enter that number everywhere too. So 200 and 200, and hit refresh everywhere. There is this number active, this should be also 0, and the particles can also have vertex colors, and currently it is only showing 31 vertex colors, but as we increase the particle number to 200, we have to refresh this. So right click and array update, and now there will be 200 vertex colors, and we should make them the same color, but we can also disable it because this vertex color is not always needed. I will show it a little later. So now it's best to refresh again everything. Here too. Now if we save, there is 200 particles, and we can add some modifiers on this particle system. So the particle system controller can have a couple of modifiers. For example, there was already this gravity, but I will delete it and add it again so you can see it easy. So there is the particle controller, and for example, I will set the speed to 0. So without speed, particles will stay in place, but we can add the gravity. Here in particle extra, click NiGravity and save the file, so we can see the controller value in the NiGravity, and here we have to type the particle system controller node number, so it will not crash the game. And we can have two types of gravity, point and wind gravity. For example, on the z-axis I type in 100, then particles will be moving upwards, and if I change the axis, particles will move in different directions. And I can have point gravity, where the direction doesn't matter. Instead, I will create some point, and particles will be either repelled or sucked into this gravity point. If I type in negative number, then particles will be sucked into that point. Sorry, if I type in positive number, that will mean that particles are sucked into that point, and the negative number is repelling. Also, you can add particle grow fade modifier. If you want to add more modifier to the particles, you can add these in a chain. I mean, the first modifier is NiGravity, and you can add the next one after it. Here, NiParticle grow fade, and this will mean that particles will, if you type in 0, that it will do not have any effect. If you type in 1, that will mean that particles will grow to their full size during their lifetime. As you see, particles are, oops, yes, the game crashed because we did not link the particle system controller as we should have. So now the game will work. The file will work in game. So as you see, particles are starting as small and increasing in size as they get older. And you can do the opposite of this. So particles are getting smaller as they travel, like fade, and you can do both of these effects. So particles are starting as small and only in the middle they are big. And there is another good controller, which is the particle color controller, which you can add the same way. It is NiParticle color modifier, and we have to save first, and do not forget to add the controller here and add color data. And we will need 3 keys with linear interpolation, and you can just pick the color what you want, but the timing is important here, that it is not in seconds, instead it is based on the lifetime of the particles. So 1 is at the end of the particle's lifetime. So for example, at start particles will be green, and at the middle they should be red, and at the end they will disappear, and we will make that by making the ambient or alpha value, I don't know which it is, this 4th value, this is the particle transparency, and we will change it to 0. So they should work in game. They are working, but it is important to know that this particle color modifier is changing the vertex color of the particles. As you can see in particle data, they have vertex colors, and if something has vertex colors, it is best to disable the emissive color, because it is overwriting the vertex color. So if we change this emissive color to black, then you can see the vertex color is nice. As you can see, I will change it to some different texture, some white white texture, so you can see the color changes here. Okay, now I will move away this particle effect as we don't need it, and I will show you how to add animated texture to it. Is pretty easy to something. So I will copy this NiTriShape again and make this name this animated texture, and I will again copy every property to it. Okay, so here is the new plane, and I will add an animated texture to it. So maybe I will add some lightning texture to this, and the way you can add NiFlipController or animated texture is that you select the NiTexturing property and click on the controller and add the NiFlipController, and once you added it, you can select, right click it and texture, edit flip controller, and here you will have to add the textures you want. For example, I will add these lightning textures. So we have added 13 textures, and you can enter the start and stop time. As it is only 13 textures, we shouldn't type here 4 seconds because the frame rate would be really low. So we will type in 1 second here, and as you can see, it is like that. Maybe we can increase the speed even further to only half a second. Maybe it's too fast. Maybe it's a pretty ugly animated texture, so I will add something else, and I can just remove these textures and add new ones. Maybe this fire texture or something should be okay. And it is important that once you edit the NiFlipController, you can see that it has these source textures, and the NiFlipController is actually using these source textures for the base texture slot. So you shouldn't have any different texture in this base texture slot, and it is best if you type here the first texture from the source of the NiFlipController. So it is 141, because if delete the old texture, because if you don't do this, then for one frame sometimes you will see some wrong texture, and yes, and you can still, even with NiFlipController, you can apply dark texture easily. So it looks like this, but it's with these textures there can be a lot of cool combinations. Well, I will just delete this dark texture slot now. Lastly, I just want to show the use of interesting meshes with a nice UV layout. For example, I have this collection of interesting meshes, and it is really easy to reuse them because you can change texture, the UV animations, scale, stretch them, combine them in any way you want. For example, I will just add some of it to this mesh, this statue maybe. I paste it here. I didn't press Ctrl V C, so Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and it is here, but I reset the translation to 0, increase its scale, maybe move it to center, and I can stretch it, but before I stretch it, I should right click on the mesh and on the mesh and transform apply, and what this will do is that currently this NiTriShape has rotation, but as we see it is in the correct position, so this will force these rotation and translation values under the NiTriShape data on these vertices, because if we stretched it without this, then the scaling would be on different axes, but we can now just scale it a little like that, and I can apply the textures and properties, copy this gam, first apply a parent node, and copy paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy paste. So here we have this mesh. We should select some new texture, maybe this one, and change the alpha flag, maybe change the visibility, and we can create another copy of it, which is a slightly stretched again, or I can apply dark texture in this as well, maybe this one, or something interesting. And I can change the animation speed of the UV controller as well, or add a new UV set so that the dark texture is on a separate UV set. I have to copy paste it, and I have to do this with the other mesh as well. 2 UV sets and copy the first. Well, you can play with these textures and UV sets, but main thing is that you can copy any kind of mesh easily. Here, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, bigger size. And I will change the dark texture to this one maybe. Now in game it looks like this. But it works with any kind of mesh. Maybe this one. Control C, Control V, reset the position to 0, and it is here. I will rotate it until it is what we want. Make it bigger. As you see, it has some wrong center, but it is not a problem. We can translate it to the position we want. Maybe I will apply a different texture to this. I can just copy this whole node and delete the other meshes and keep only that circle mesh, this one, and I will apply some different texture and make its visibility more intense. And here as well, change the stencil property to draw both. I can even add this under BillboardNode. Node. Okay, it's right here. Well, it's like this now. I will not apply the BillboardNode now. Just remove this old one and keep this one. Maybe I can create multiple copies of it again with different sizes. Well, when I scale this, it is also translated because it has some wrong center, but it's not hard to fix that. I will change the texture, maybe. This one. Change the speed. I will just add some last one. Maybe. I will not add the last one. This is the end of the video. I hope you found